So what was the question? What everybody's asking? What happened to your comic book cover? Why you
It's
didn't
at
make
home on the kitchen counter, and it's about 2/3 done. And it's got a title. It was Ninja Woman and Her Dragon, and the dragon is done. The word dragon
Why
is on it. The rest of the wording isn't. And there's no ninja because you can't see them anyway, and someday it'll be finished.
So if we have another show next year,
Yes.
maybe we'll.
Yes,
There.
no, it should be done by the end of the month.
Oh, nice.
It was fun, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, the show was fun, too.
Oh yeah.
You guys just talk about the fact that you're the curators to this show.
Okay. Yes, we are the curators of this show.
And what show is
It's
it?
called the comics art cover.
And we had this idea to ask a bunch of local artists if they would like to make a comic book cover. We didn't ask a bunch of comic book makers. We just asked local artists that do all kinds of other kinds of art. Fine artists, and
Yeah.
they didn't have to make a comic book, just the cover, and they had fun. They've all said they had fun. We had fun.
And it
And
was.
I might say that Martin and I had fun hanging. It took us forever because we
yeah,
kept
yeah.
reading.
Do you have some wine before?
No?
So I think it was very interesting too that we made a invitation all online, on Facebook and through email, and we didn't know for most of the months how many people were participating until the last week when the deadline came, and it's like, how many people are going to be here? It's like, where to know? So the last couple of days before you hang out the show,
Then they
then we
arrived.
found out how
Yeah.
many artists were participating, and so that was very interesting. I mean, everybody put lots of nice thought about the covers, don't you think?
And everybody that I've talked to that had a story, like they had a process they went through, and they enjoyed that because it was something they, for the most part, don't ever think about doing, making comic books. Yeah.
Like you will see in this video, we interview some of the artists about their covers, so they will tell you what is about the cover, and some of them talk about the process, like you said. So it's very interesting. And we want to say thank you to Martin Batchelor
For sure.
for offering the gallery.
And for hanging it and helping us and being there to accept these entries as they came through the door.
And also for putting few pieces there too.
Yes.
Very interesting pieces. Too bad that he didn't want to talk about them, but very interesting pieces though.
The other part that I found from Martin is that he was so helpful and just there as a gallery owner. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was pretty nice of him to offer the space and to have the show. As soon as he knew that we had the idea, he jumped into. He offered without any asking anything and say, "Why you don't have it here?" And it was perfect also that he was part of the Integrate Art festival, so
Yeah, we should thank them. That was part of it. Yeah.
we were part of the festival, so it was a big thing too. Thanks to Martin too, right? What we thought about what was a comic book show? Well,
It's fun and it's current because it's graphic novels, novel movies are out. Everything is very current.
and lots of people also grew up with comics, right? So one or another is in their psyche, I think.
Yes, but going
So it's
back to the
yeah,
30s,
since
so
your childhood, and so we thought it's going to be fun. It's creative. Everybody's going to create their own stories. Probably they have their own stories forever. So in a little comic book cover, the stories are going to come out, right? And like you see, there are 80 or something different stories
yeah.
that can become a book, each one, I think. if you ask the artist, right?
They think so.
Yeah. Well, it's all part of Exhibit V. Well, it's kind of part of Exhibit V, but yeah, it's kind of related a little bit. But
One
we
of the
got
things,
together
yeah. One of the things I like is
co-curate.
that we got an opportunity to work together again. We got an opportunity to engage in a whole lot of artists in the community. And that's always interesting. Yes. We were going to have a show before the idea of comics. Yes. We were clear we were going. No.
It's still in the works. I think we are going to work more about the show.
Yes.
That show, the first idea.
But we're not telling it right now.
Until and then we have more concrete idea work. Well, the idea is there, but
Yes.
we have to work a little bit more and what's. So then the second choice was the comic book covers. And we decided, well, go for it. For this one, it's easier for many people. It's going to be more fun. And summertime, so
Yes.
yeah, so it was perfect, right? Don't you think?
I thought so. The other one's more complicated.
So, just in case you don't know our names,
Irma Sultanovich.
and Efren Kiros. Tell me about your.
Okay, well, I guess before I actually go into what my art's about, or at least the comic book covers, I think a brief little history about comics should be, I feel like I need to say a little bit about comic history. At one point in time, comics were under fire before they actually had the Comic Association Code. And they were being told that they were corrupting youth, causing crime, bad influences. And so then most of the time they were talking about kind of the horror or science fiction type books like Weird Tales or Strange Stories. So that's kind of the basis of what I was going at first. And yeah, I kind of like that idea of the whole sci-fi weird stories, and with my twist, I kind of wanted to do something that's not usually done. So that's why I picked the Illuminati, and I figured the Secrets of the Illuminati because it would be a good expose kind of strange tale. And then the Curse of the 9 to 5ers was kind of a variation on a zombie comic in that kind of same vein of the horror story, but with the 9 to 5 people kind of being the zombies, and one person, D. Dobbs, being the one who kind of put everybody in that kind of state of mind. With that one, I tried to make it kind of really 50s with the angles and even, I guess, yeah, kind of the style. And then the other one, I was kind of hoping to kind of portray the 70s kind of slickness of the comic. So it's a real contrast, I guess, of style and like crispness. I tried to make it really crisp and yeah, that 1970s kind of style of comic that was kind of the boom for most comic book characters like the X-Men or even like Masters of Kung Fu or Black Panther, that kind of idea.
Once upon a time, a long time ago, about 1943, I had a superhero in my life. I also read a lot of comic books, which some kids weren't allowed to. But when I was asked to do my superhero, I thought of my Uncle Norman. And he was going off from the prairies to join the Navy. And I thought, yeah, that was an amazing, scary thing to do, because every time we went to a Saturday afternoon movie, the first thing they showed was the news. And I saw what war was like, even though it was in black and white. I imagined the color and the chaos and the terror. And I put that in my comic book cover. And then I put a photograph of my Uncle Norman smoking his pipe on his way to BC to learn how to do radar and join the Navy with his bell-bottom trousers and a suitcase and his Navy hat and all of that. And I just thought he was fantastic. So that's my cartoon. Down in the corner is my little grandson, leaping, holding the sign. I thought that was kind of funny as well. So that's my story. Somehow I think that supermen aren't always the ones with flying cape and the super muscles and all that sort of thing. Superman in my life was somebody who decided he was going to go and give his life for something that he really believed in, and really actually he was a very normal, ordinary, prairie kid. Normal Norman.
Well, Efren asked me to do a comic book cover for this show, and I sort of went, well, I don't know. Even though I do that stuff all the time, I was going, I can't think of any ideas. And then by the time I was through, I'd done 14 of them. So, so mostly I was able to cheat because I have this sort of like alternative universe in my head called Caesar City. And so it has its own world and its own literature, and now has its own comic books. So I was able to lift a lot of ideas from the stuff that I'd done for Caesar City. So like the Naughty Pine romance is from a series of books, romance novels, and so now they're comic books as well, written by Joyce Bitts. And the Horror Hotel, that was one that came out as just strictly a comic. I didn't have anything for it before, but I had this idea that there'd be this ongoing series of horror comics of this young couple that no matter where they went, they ended up in the same horror hotel. They'd go anywhere in the world, that same hotel would be there. It would be like this recurring nightmare. And so King Diamond, Space Ace. Of course, I wanted to do a space comic. And that's actually what I ended up doing, was trying to do one of each genre of comic I could think of. I think the only ones I didn't do a sort of classic illustrated piece. And I don't know what I would do with that. I couldn't come up with an idea. But otherwise, I did war comics and westerns and kid comics and funny animals. And it was a lot of fun. And I really thank Efren for coming up with the idea. And I think it was an idea that inspired a lot of people. This is a great looking show.
This is a cover to a comic that I'm actually working on called The Mermaid, and it's about a ship called the Mermaid, and also there are mermaids in it, as well as mermen, and probably some other things. It's kind of a fantasy story about a girl who runs away to sea kind of accidentally because she's looking for her brother, and she sort of gets not shanghaied exactly, but her auntie sends her off on a quest. And she falls in with mermaids, quite literally. I'm going to be releasing it as a webcomic pretty soon. It's going to be probably about 2 years before I get the whole thing finished, because it's going to be a really thick book, and then I'll release it as a book. The cover that I've got up here is an original, and I did it in watercolor and pen and ink, sort of traditional comic book materials. And I got to look at it for a minute. Hang on. What can I tell you? Is it showing there? Can I just point out things? Okay. So this is our protagonist, Sammy, and that's the cat who doesn't have a name yet, but it's the ship's cat. And this is her auntie, who's her Aunt Root, who is negotiating with the folks on the ship to get her a job on the ship. So her mother died at sea, but she didn't even know that because her father swore off the sea and moved away. So she tells her auntie about her brother, and so the auntie says, "Well, you just got to go to sea." And she says, well, how long? And it's just, like I go a week or two, I'll find him, right? And she says, oh, I don't know, 3 months. And so she's going, 3 months. And then she has a dream, and she dreams about her brother in the clutches of a mermaid, and about her father shouting in the face of her mother, and she wakes up and she knows she has to go to sea. So she tells her aunt she has to go to the Mermaid, and which is the ship that's owned by her cousin. And then just before she gets on board, her aunt gives her a talisman And she gets on board, and she has some kind of little adjustment problems with some of the sailors, and she meets the cook, who is kind of this funny little guy who thinks he's funny. But they kind of hit it off eventually. And here I haven't quite filled in a lot of the lines. And just as they're taking off from the shore, they sight some dolphins, which is a good luck thing. But then she sees that there's also a mermaid among them. And so that's the end of the first chapter.
I really embrace the idea of the show. I love the idea, especially because I'm a writer, and I think writer first probably, and photographer and painter second. And so this to me was great because I got to work with text. And what I did was I actually covered my computer, all around my computer with notes, and I worked from the text and I worked backwards for my images. And so then I came up with what I wanted to be for my titles, and then I made the images that would fit around that. And then I took out and I work with dolls a lot. I do a lot of doll photography, and so I use dolls for my subjects to create my images. I like using the doll because they're from popular culture, and you take them, something that people are familiar with, so also makes the image popular to them or familiar to them, but then I put them in a position which they're not used to seeing the dolls in, and so I think it just makes it eye-catching and it makes it a bit more impactful. And then I always put a sculptural element to my pieces too. I like to have, whether it's a simple texture or beyond. And so my pieces, I tried to make them appear like a comic book. And so I wanted to give that look. And I was used to comics not being preserved. I was more used to comics that were read. We grew up with them. And so I wanted mine to look sort of worn and floppy looking and not pressed. So that's what I work for. And and I work a lot with the deep gel. So that allowed me to give the sculpting element and give it that body and strength that I needed to hold its shape. So, and then I mounted it just also on a 3/4 inch floater backing so that it holds it off the wall a bit. So it sets the piece out a little bit better and gives it that, helps it explain away that curviness or floppiness to it, because it makes it seem more like a real comic.
So what's the story of
Choir
Choir Boy?
Boy, well,
Yeah. Going to be the story.
Yeah, I chose Choir Boy because a lot of time I usually put social commentary into most of my pieces, and in this one here I wanted it's to show some of the issues that the church has had all along, as far as abuse of people and exclusion of women, and I chose the castrati because they were actually castrated so that they would maintain their higher voices, so they wouldn't have to allow women into the church. So that was like hurting two groups of people in one shot there. So, and I mocked the religion a lot. It's sort of in the name of freedom from religion, but also in support of a lot of the artists that had the jihads put against them because of back in the day when I think they were Danish magazines published some images of the Muhammad, I think it was, and there was death contracts were put out on different artists, so I produced my own series to go with that, and they called These Photos Make Me Look Fatwa, and it was just to help sort of in solidarity with those artists who were being persecuted. So.
Hello, Efren. Hello, the public. This is Deborah Olata speaking from the Comics Art Show. This is one of my 3 pieces. It's called Reverie. It's the cover of an issue of a graphic novel which has not yet been written. I started thinking about this back in the 80s when Mouse came out, the graphic novel, M-A-U-S. But I looked at a lot of work by Blake, and I really liked the way he put together the imagery and the text, and it just sat for a while, a couple of decades, and then there was this opportunity to put work I'd done as a painting. It began as a watercolor painting with the overlay of text, with the understanding in my mind anyway that in the future that would be a publication using humors, H-U-M-O-U-R-S, as a premise. And the humors are really went back to Egypt and Mesopotamia, but it was the Greek physicians, that Galen, it was later when Hippocrates, of course, and it was used through traditional medicine for 2,000 years, but and recently has been rekindled as a psychological theory of body systems, connecting with the fluids in the body as the overabundance or under the disparity or the lack of to affect our minds. And Ayurvedic medicine uses it only use 3 humors, not the 4, and some cultures use 5. But anyway, I was thinking about all this when I was making the work, because we're all, and I'm especially, looking for explanations of why people do what they do and how we come to be. And I started doing a series of paintings with the skeletal system and the musculatory system, because I wanted to get down to the essence of being human. So it seemed a natural idea to use the humors as the basis, going back to origins. I found these original medical illustrations that talked about the humors, and Persians were another culture that worked with the humors, and there were some illustrations of people's concept of organs back then and blood systems, and this is before microscopes, of course. And it just seemed really of value to investigate this in a more lighthearted, less psychological, more emotive way, and this show gave me an opportunity to put all that together. So this is issue number 1, Reverie meaning dream or dream state, because that's where things happen that allow us to live a creative life. That's it. That's me.
So what I've done is I've created 3 covers for the show, all of them based on modern life or life in the future. And I'm a storyteller, and that's how I do all of my illustrations. I end up telling a story. So in this case, with the modern romance, it's even though they're androids, they don't know they're androids. The humans have vanished. They just carry on because they know no different, and so they have a life that we didn't know anything about, which is the same as our life, actually. So in this case, the androids were looking for a relationship, and they had a hotline, and now there's 3 of them, and they're trying to figure out, is a love triangle going to work? Again, it all ends up being the same sort of concerns that we have. And so that's sort of the fun part of it, is creating these little stories and then building an illustration, in this case for a cover, around those stories. What I do is, because I have MS, I sometimes can't hold a brush for very long. So I do everything, all my drawings, all my paintings, all my assemblage on the computer. And the reason I do that is that if I have to stop working, they don't dry until I tell them to dry. So I can just pick up wherever I left off and just carry on from there. And the bonus, of course, is that when I finish the drawing or the illustration, I can print it out on a hard copy, and that's what I've got on the walls here. They're 8.5 by 11 on watercolor paper with pigmented ink, so they're nice and rich in texture and color, and that's sort of what I like to do. Working on the computer, I find as exciting as traditional, because the programs that I'm utilizing use electronic paint the same way I used to use regular paint. The techniques are the same, the end result is virtually the same, you do color overlays, and one color affects another color. So it's very much like watercolor or oil paint. And the bonus is, of course, you don't make any mess. You know, when I finish work at the end of the day, I don't find spatters of paint all over the floor. If I do, I'm in a lot of trouble. Right? So yeah, and that's what I find exciting. I get to construct, to tell stories, to do the drawings, and then do the output, and then let people enjoy them. And that's what this show is all about, is to have people come and enjoy the characters that are on the walls. And this show has a lot of characters. It's really quite exciting. And let's see what else. So the other two that I've got, one of them is called Sven. He's from Planet Motel. And he has a twin brother that we don't see, but is referred to in the cover. And so there's always a sibling rivalry between them. And in this case, Sven is very gregarious, and everybody loves him. He's everyone's boyfriend. And he just loves to share himself with people. And so it's all innuendo, and you bring to it what you bring to it, and you take away from it what you are. And that's fun too. And then the last one is called Bada Boom, and it's about a character that I've been developing over the last year or two. And she is an android base, but she's very environmentally sensitive. And so in this one, she's returned to town because the people who mess around with Mother Nature need to be addressed, and she's there to address the concerns of Mother Nature. And so that's where that story goes. And it's all fun. You know, I really enjoy doing them. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Barb Weaver-Bosson. I'm a painter, and I was happy to be invited to this comics show. And I have illustration in my background, and I love satire and developing characters or reading about characters in other people's artwork. And this is Chelsea. She is the designer to the stars, and she also wants to rule the universe. So as an interior designer, she's come to Earth, and she is designing residences one at a time. Whether the client is willing or not, she'll go in, decide what needs to be fixed. So here she is. She has a ray gun, and she's just blasting this particular fellow's home. His name's Ted, and this is his Batchelor pad. And so Chelsea wants to rid the Earth of many ugly environments. So she has taken his residence and turned it into a very modern space-age environment. And Ted, the character, doesn't like it. So he publicly announces that he's not very happy with his home makeover. So she doesn't like the fact that he hasn't paid her for her design services. So he gets put up for charges because he refuses to pay her. And then, will Ted escape his life sentence of torment and hard labor on planet Chelsor? So here's the drama. And because of the cover idea of the comic book story, because we don't have continuing pages to look at, I put the story all on the front, and then the viewer can imagine what Ted's life is like on planet Chelsor. But there would be other stories about other places that she has renovated. But Chelsea is a very elegant woman, and she has great power in the universe because she's starting to make it in her own idea, the Chelsean concepts. So I was happy to create this character for the comic cover show and hope that people enjoy this alternative sort of art that I've done for the show.
So my story for Wonder Woman comes from a few different sources. So when I was younger, when I was little, I loved Wonder Woman very, very much. And I used to watch the Linda Carter series. And my mom made me my very, very first Wonder Woman outfit when I was about 7. And so I grew up being programmed with loving Wonder Woman. And then I made my own costume for Halloween, and I wore it from 1989 to about 2003. And then when I got the invite to be part of this show, I hauled the Wonder Woman outfit out of the closet, squeezed myself into it, and I played on the bun, Wonder Woman, so the hair bun that I always wear. So I played on that, Wonder Woman with Wonder Woman, and I have a situation happening with a giant toy company with regards to my registered trademark, the word Carolyn. And so I incorporated all of the things that are in my life or that I have been interested in from the comic books and a current David and Goliath story in my life today.